How does Garrett Greene stack up with arguably the two best quarterbacks to ever wear the old gold and blue? And inarguably the two best running quarterbacks to ever wear the old gold and blue? We're going to talk about that, and we're going to look at some numbers right after this word from our sponsor. Ladies and gentlemen, this episode is brought to you by Dutch Miller Automotive, where friends and family pricing means you get the best deal right up front on any new or pre-loved vehicle in stock every time. With brands like Chevrolet, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Kia, Hyundai, Ford, GMC, Buick, and Subaru, the Dutch Miller Automotive family is always growing and ready to put you in the car or truck you've been searching for. Check out our inventory across West Virginia at DutchMillerAuto.com or come in today to the home of friends and family pricing, only at a Dutch Miller Automotive store near you. What is up, college sports fans, Big 12 fans, and fellow members of Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into another edition of Couz's Corner. Belly yourself up to the bar and let me pour you out another shot of top shelf college football content. On tap in today's episode, we're comparing the stats of Garrett Greene versus the stats of Major Harris and Pat White. Arguably two of the greatest college quarterbacks of all time. Many would say the two best quarterbacks of all time at West Virginia. I personally think you need to put Geno Smith in that conversation, but I don't think it's arguable that they're the two best running quarterbacks of all time at West Virginia and the two most successful quarterbacks ever at West Virginia as far as wins go. But in a previous video that I did, which I'll link to at the end here, I compared Garrett Greene's numbers to Will Grier, Geno Smith, and Skyler Howard, the three quarterbacks who have the three all-time greats, in my opinion, who have played in the Big 12 at West Virginia. Well, someone put in the comments, and I apologize, I don't remember who you were, but someone said, hey, Couz, you need to compare Garrett Greene to Major Harris and Pat White. And I thought, you know what, that's actually a great idea. So I decided to do that. I put these numbers in a spreadsheet, and we're going to look at them. Now, I'm going to tell you, I was very surprised by what I found here when comparing these numbers. Let's go ahead and pull them up, and then I'll go over a few caveats to these numbers, and then we'll go over the numbers specifically. Now, first off, I've got year one. Obviously, Garrett Greene's only been a full-time starter or only been the starter at West Virginia for basically a full season. He did start a few games in 22, but I'm not counting that. I'm just looking at the 1 full year he was a starter. Now, I'm also looking at Pat White and Major Harris in their first 2 seasons as a starter. And the reason I'm doing that is because I also want to look at growth from year 1 to year 2 during their time as a starting quarterback and how much they improved. Because that kind of goes along with the point that I made in my previous video of how much improvement we should expect from Garrett from year 1 to year 2. Now, let's look at the numbers and some caveats here. Number one, I color-coded some numbers. Hopefully you can see that. But the blue, categories in blue, where I have Garrett Greene's numbers highlighted in blue, those were years where, or those were categories where Garrett was better than both Pat White and Major Harris during their first year as a starting quarterback at West Virginia in those categories. And if it's highlighted in yellow, he was better than Major Harris only in that category. There was no category in which Garrett Greene was better than just Pat White. He was either better than Major in the category or he was better than both guys, okay? Now, some other caveats. Obviously, Garrett Greene was a junior by the time he won the starting job at West Virginia, okay? Both Pat White and Major Harris were redshirt freshmen. So we need to take that into account. We also need to take into account they played in the Big East. And in Major's case, he played in a completely different era of college football back when the running quarterback was rare, and he was kind of before his time in that regard. So that made him very unique and made him even harder to stop. So we got to take all those things into account here. But still, when you look at these numbers, you will see Garrett Greene stacks up in year 1 as a starter. When you look at completion percentage, Garrett Greene, 53.1% completion percentage. Pat White was 57% his first year. Major Harris was 50% in his first year. Now, all the naysayers out there, all the Garrett Greene naysayers, that's the one argument they use to say, well, he doesn't complete a high enough percentage of his passes. Well, that's a fair argument, and he does need to improve on that. But when you look at year 2 of both Pat White and Major Harris, you'll see they did improve drastically in those categories, especially Pat, and I think Garrett can do the same. Now, when you look at yards, now, this is really not a fair comparison because Garrett Greene threw the ball a lot more than Pat or Major did. Garrett's playing in a pass-heavier offense under the air raid tree of Neil Brown, whereas Major and Pat did not play in those systems, okay? They played in a run-first system. And in the case of Pat White, yes, it was a spread offense, but Rich Rodriguez was leaning more towards the run game because that was the strength of the team. They did not throw the ball as much. But anyway, so we need to take that into account here, but Garrett did have 2,400 yards in his first year. Neither of the other two guys eclipsed 2,000. As a matter of fact, Major did finally eclipse the 2,000-yard passing mark in his junior season, but he did not do it in year one or year two. When you look at touchdowns again, yes, Garrett had more touchdowns than Pat and Major did in their first years and even their second years, but again, he threw the ball a lot more times. Interceptions, this is the one category where Garrett Greene doesn't get enough love, in my opinion. He only threw 4 interceptions in 277 pass attempts, folks, and had a 16-4 touchdown interception ratio. That's elite, in my opinion. When you look at Pat White, he threw 5 interceptions his first season, but it was on 114 attempts. Major threw 8 in 155 attempts. So, again, elite status there for Garrett Greene. Also want to give a shout-out to the offensive line that was protecting Garrett Greene because he wasn't getting hit a whole lot when he was in the pocket, or even when he was scrambling around. He was not getting hit a lot. His offensive line kept him clean. That also plays a role in quarterbacks throwing interceptions, as we all know. So shout out to Garrett for protecting the football and making good decisions, and also shout out to his offensive line for protecting him. QB rating. Garrett had a 142.2 QB rating in year one. Pat had 132.4. Major at 128.6. So he eclipsed both of those in that category. Now, when you look at let's look at rushing the football. This is one category it was kind of hard to compare Garrett to when you look at people like Geno and Will Greer because they didn't run the football a whole lot. Well, Garrett, Pat, and Major all ran the football a lot. So this is a more fair comparison here. When you look at rushing attempts, both Major and Pat beat Garrett in that category. They both had more attempts than him in year one. However, when you look at yards per carry, Garrett actually surpassed Major Harris in that category with 6.4 yards per carry, whereas Major was at 4.2 yards per carry in his first season and got to 4.6 in year two. Now, Pat White was a lead in this category. Pat White was at 7.3 in year one and 7.4 in year two. Rushing yards. Garrett had more rushing yards than Major in year one, but not as many as Pat. Pat White had 952 rushing yards in year one as a starter, whereas Garrett had 772 and Major had 615. Rushing touchdowns. Garrett Greene, 13 rushing touchdowns in year one as a quarterback. Pat White had 7. Major Harris had 6. Now, here's something else I want us to take a look at, folks, and this was kind of the point of my last video. I want you to look at the improvement that both Pat White and Major Harris made from year one to year two as a starting quarterback for West Virginia. Especially look at Pat and completion percentage. He went from 57% completion percentage in year one to 65.9 in year two. Major Harris went from 50 to 56% completion percentage. When you look at touchdowns, Pat went from 8 to 13. Major went from 10 to 14. QB rating, big jumps there. Pat went from 132.4 to 159.7. Major had an even bigger jump, 128.6 QB rating in year one to 167.4 QB rating in year two. So we can expect Garrett Greene to make major improvements, in my opinion, in those categories. From year one to year two, just like Pat and Major did. Now, is he going to reach their status? I'm not saying he will, but I'm telling you, if he can make that jump from year one to year two on a similar level, and West Virginia can win a lot of football games again in year two of Garrett's tenure as a starter, I think the sky's the limit for this football team, especially if the defense is going to hold up their end of the bargain. But I think the sky's the limit for this team, and I think Garrett Greene has the potential now. I'm not putting him there yet, but I think he has the potential. If he can build off the success from year one to year two, he has the potential to be one of the elite quarterbacks in West Virginia history and could go down as one of the all-time greats. I really believe that deep in my soul. But he needs to improve his completion percentage, especially on the shorter passes, and improve that QB rating, continue to take care of the football, and he has to stay healthy. That's key too. He needs to stay healthy because we all know Garrett has missed games with injury in his career. He missed 2 last year, and he missed a game or got knocked out of a game early in 22. I want to hear your opinions, Couz's Corner family. Let me know in the comment section. What do you think about this comparison? How would you stack Garrett Greene up with other quarterbacks to ever lace him up at West Virginia? And what do you think about his year one numbers when you compare them to Major Harris or Pat White? I know there are a lot of things to look at outside the numbers. There's the eye test. There's, how many wins they got. Did they play in major bowl games? Did they play for national championships like Major did? All that plays a part. I get it. But when you look strictly at the numbers, Garrett Greene is right there with two of the best to ever do it, at least in their first year as Mountaineers. Let me know what you think. Also, guys, don't forget, you can become a part of the elite VIP club here at Couz's Corner. Just like the four folks that I have scrolling along the bottom of my screen right now, these are my VIP member shout-outs for this episode. Hellbilly, Tack Sprint, C. Dotson B210, and Tom Reinhardt. Thank you all for your membership here at Couz's Corner. If you want to become a VIP member, there are two levels. There's the $2.99 a month level, and there's the $4.99 a month level. Obviously, you get a few extra perks with the $4.99 level. Hit the join button below to become a member of that club. It's also a way to support what I do here on the channel and help me keep the lights on. Another way you can support me, ONIT NIL trading cards. Support me because I'll make a small commission if you use the link in my description box. And you'll also be supporting your favorite student athletes by buying ONIT NIL trading cards. The athletes get 60% of the profits. Link is in my description box. Once again, also, guys, I have a merch store. And right now, if you order by January 16th or through January 16th, you get free standard shipping on any item in my merch store. That includes hoodies, t-shirts, ball caps, coffee mugs, whatever I have over there. I have a lot of different designs to choose from. I have the West Virginia versus the world. I have the West Virginia Jack Daniels. I have my channel logo design and some others. Check out my merch store. Again, link is in the description box, or you can hit one of the photos below. That gets you into the store as well. And last but not least, go to my website, couzscorner.com. You can find some really good blog articles over there by myself and some other writers. I'm continuing to add writers to the team. So come check it out, couzscorner.com. You can also access my videos, my audio-only podcast, and at the bottom of my homepage, you can give me a shout-out. Send me an email, and I'll try my best to respond to your email. With all that said, guys, you can also like, share, comment, subscribe. All that's free, and it's all easy and only takes a second. That helps that YouTube algorithm and will help my channel grow. If you want to check out the video I mentioned earlier, you can find it right here, comparing Garrett Greene to Will Greer, Skylar Howard, and Geno Smith. And until next video, have a top shelf day and Q Country Roads.